How much structural support does plaster and lathe provide to a framed wall? If removing an entire room of its plaster and lathe, should the studs be temporarily braced if not being immediately recovered with sheetrock?
Hi. I can help. Let me read closer. Before we get started, I'd like to point out that a professional engineer's standard of care typically includes a site visit to assess field conditions and get an overall understanding of the structure. This can obviously not be accomplished through the internet. The information provided here is meant for informational purposes only, general sizing and budgeting, and is based on the information provided by you. The information should be verified by a professional engineer who can visit the site to ensure that potentially important information has not been overlooked or omitted. Is this a bearing wall?
Yes.
The lathe really just provides bracing for the wall studs in the weak direction. Without it, the wall has significantly less axial load capacity. The lathe and plaster itself doesn't provide any capacity increase, it's the bracing aspect that increases the capacity of the studs. If you're removing the plaster, I would probably shore the floor framing while doing the work. Shore it to ground so you don't load the floor.
I would be removing the plaster and lathe. I'm not sure what you mean by shoring the floor framing.
I would support the floor framing close to the end near the wall so that it's not loading the wall.
I don't understand. If I'm referring to a framed wall of 2x4 studs, 16-inch arc, with a top and bottom plate, what am I supporting? Not sure what you mean by floor framing.
If you remove the lathe and plaster without removing the load from the wall, you risk having the studs buckle. If you shore the joists, you're providing a different load path for the joists so they don't load the wall while you perform the work.
Okay. What about attaching 1x3 or 2x4s across the studs to provide the stability given by the lathe?
You can do that, but there is a brief period where the studs are unbraced in between removing the lathe and installing the temporary bracing.
What if I use 1x3s across the studs and attach fire stops between all the studs? 2x4 fire stops.
You can do that at the third points for use during construction, but you still have the issue of the time between removing the plaster and installing the 1x3s and fire stops.
I understand the issue of time that the studs will lack the horizontal support provided by the lathe. What do you mean at the third points for use during construction?
I mean if the studs are 9 tall, install the fire blocks at 3 and 6.
Okay. Thank you. Studs are 8, so 2.5 and 5.5, or 3 and 6.
I would do 2, 8 and 5-4.
Oh. K, exact thirds. How many 1x3s per wall, in addition to the fire stops, and is the same required for non-bearing walls?
If you get the fire stops in, I wouldn't worry about the 1x3s. For the non-lead bearing walls, you don't need to do anything, you can just rip off the plaster with no worries.
Oh. K. Thanks for your time and patience.
No problem. Best of luck with your project.
Thanks. I will.
Thanks.
If you have a home improvement or appliance question and want to chat with an expert now, visit JustAnswer.com/YTHI.